Dear traveler, welcome to a place between wakefulness and dream. Here, the ancient tales of Greece float like soft clouds in the twilight sky. Slowly close your eyes and prepare to descend into the depths of the story. Now, surrender yourself to deep relaxation, allowing your body to become as heavy as the ancient stones of the temples that have stood for millennia, weathered by time to their smooth, serene shapes. Tonight, we will journey together through timeless tales of gods and heroes, of love and transformation, of eternal peace and gentle dreams. These tales have been told for millennia, passed down through countless generations, whispered by firelight and sung by bards, and now they come to you as the gift of peaceful sleep. Every word has been chosen to lead you to deeper relaxation. Every image designed to silence the day's heavy thoughts and replace them with the serene beauty of myth. The ancient Greeks understood something profound about stories and sleep. They knew that the right tale, told in the right way, could transport the mind to a place of perfect peace. They believed that Hypnos, the god of sleep himself, would visit those who opened their hearts to the gentle rhythms of story and myth. And so we honor that ancient wisdom tonight, allowing these tales to become a bridge between your waking consciousness and the deep, restorative sleep that awaits you as you listen. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. If your mind wanders, that is perfectly natural. Simply let it drift where it will, like a leaf on a gentle stream. And know that these words will be here, guiding you softly toward rest. You may hear every word, or you may drift in and out, catching fragments like memories of dreams. Both are perfect. Both are exactly as they should be. The stories we'll explore tonight are filled with wonder, but they are told in a voice of calm, in a rhythm designed to slow your breathing and ease your heart. We'll visit sun-drenched meadows and moonlit shores, ancient forests and starlit skies. We'll meet gods who move with grace and mortals who discover the extraordinary in the quiet moments of their lives. And through it all, you'll be safe, comfortable, and gradually, inevitably, drifting toward the deepest, most peaceful sleep. Let us begin our journey in the time before time, when the universe itself was young and everything was just beginning. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the gentle rhythm of these words carry you away from the concerns of your day, away from tomorrow's plans, into the eternal now of mythology, where time moves differently, where a moment can last forever and forever can pass in a moment. The ancient storytellers would begin their tales by invoking the Muses, those 9 divine sisters who inspired all creativity and art. Tonight, we invoke not the muse of epic poetry or tragedy, but the gentle spirits of rest and peace, the quiet whispers of Nyx, the night and her son Hypnos, sleep itself. We ask them to watch over you as these stories unfold, to cradle you in comfort and guide you into dreams as soft as clouds and as sweet as honey from Mount Hymettus. Feel yourself beginning to let go now, your shoulders dropping, your jaw relaxing, your entire body settling more deeply into rest. With each breath, you release a little more tension, a little more of the day's concerns. And as you breathe out, imagine you're breathing out not just air, but worry itself, watching it dissolve into nothing, leaving only peace behind. The Greeks had a beautiful concept called ataraxia, a state of serene calmness, of being undisturbed by anything, of perfect tranquility. This is what we seek tonight, what these stories will help you find. Not through effort, but through surrender. Not through thinking, but through allowing. The stories will do the work. You need only listen, or drift, or dream. Section 2. The creation of the world, from chaos to cosmos in the beginning. When there was neither light nor darkness, neither earth nor sky, neither names nor forms of the gods themselves. There was only chaos, but do not imagine chaos as violent or terrifying. It is not the kind of chaos you might think of. Instead, imagine it as a vast, gentle void, like the space between thoughts when your mind is completely calm, or like the soft darkness behind your now closed eyelids, infinite, peaceful, full of potential. From this primordial stillness the first beings arose. They were not born, they simply formed as naturally as breath. First came Gaia, Earth. It slowly, gracefully, shaped itself like the morning mist turning into dew on the grass. It was not hard or sharp, but rather soft and nurturing from the very beginning. Its soil dark and rich, its surface smooth and ready to embrace all future life. Imagine Gaia as she first took form, a sphere of gentle brown earth, rotating slowly in the void, peaceful and alone, but not lonely. She existed in perfect contentment, warming herself with her own inner heat, which would one day become the volcanic fires and hot springs, but which at that moment was just a comfortable warmth, like the warmth you feel now as you relax more deeply into your bed. From Gaia's dreaming, for even the earth can dream, arose Uranus. The sky, he spread himself above her like a vast blue canopy, arching overhead in an embrace that was both infinite and intimate. Uranus was studded with stars, those first lights in the universe, each one twinkling into existence like slow, lazy blinks, appearing one by one in no particular hurry, because time itself had just been born and there was no rush for anything. Together, Gaia and Uranus existed in harmony, the earth below and the sky above, with a gentle space between them that would later be filled with air and clouds and flying things, but which at that moment was simply distance, simply breath, simply the peaceful gap between two lovers who need not always touch to know their connection. From their union came the Titans, the first divine generation. They emerged not in violence, but in a gradual unfolding, like flowers opening to the sun, like ferns uncurling their fronds in the spring. There was Oceanus, who became the great river that encircled the world, his waters flowing in an endless, soothing circle, always moving yet always the same, like the rhythm of waves on a shore or the beating of a heart. There was Tethys, goddess of fresh water, who became every spring and stream, every source of clear, pure water bubbling up from the earth. Imagine her as the spirit of a mountain spring, that water so cold and clean it almost sparkles, emerging from between moss-covered rocks and trickling down into pools where the water is, so still you can see every pebble at the bottom, every shimmer of reflected sky. Hyperion came into being as the Titan of light, though not harsh sunlight. Rather, he was the soft luminescence of dawn, the gentle glow that precedes the sun, that hushed moment when darkness begins to fade but true daylight hasn't yet arrived. He was the god of that peaceful transition, that liminal time when the world holds its breath, and Gaia, his consort, was the divine radiance, the goddess of sight and the sparkle of precious metals and stones. She was the gleam of gold in a riverbed, the shine of silver under moonlight, the soft glow of gems in the earth's deep places. Together, Hyperion and they would later give birth to Helios, the sun, Selene, the moon, and Eos, the dawn, the three luminaries that would light the world with gentle reliability. Cronus came forth as the youngest of the Titans. And though his story would later turn dark, at his birth he was simply potential. Simply another consciousness awakening in the new universe. At this early moment, he was innocent, merely one more divine being, learning what it meant to exist. Stretching his awareness out into the cosmos, like you might stretch in bed. Testing the boundaries of this new thing called being. The Titans in their early days knew nothing of conflict, or time, or loss. They existed in a state of pure presence, watching as the world formed itself around them and through them. They saw the oceans fill their basins, watched the first clouds form and drift, witnessed the birth of mountains as Gaia's surface wrinkled and folded like fabric, creating peaks and valleys, high places and low. Rain fell for the first time, and it was a gentle rain, a soft pattering that lasted for years, or perhaps centuries, time being so flexible then. And it was not cold or harsh, but perfectly temperate, each drop a tiny messenger of the sky's love for the earth, millions and billions of drops falling in a rhythm that would later be called the first music. The first percussion, the original drumming on which all other rhythms would be based. In those early days, the world was neither hot nor cold, but existed in perfect equilibrium, a comfortable temperature like the one you might maintain under your covers now. That ideal warmth that is neither stifling nor chilly, but just exactly right, making you feel safe and comfortable and ready to drift away. The Titans would gather in the high places of the world, not yet called Mount Olympus, for that would come later, but simply the peaceful peaks and plateaus where earth and sky came closest together. There they would sit for ages, speaking rarely, content simply to watch and to be, observing the slow changes as the world found its rhythm, as day learned to follow night, and night learned to follow day, as the moon learned her phases and the stars learned their paths across the darkness. This was the age of perfect peace, before any being knew want or fear or anger, when existence itself was enough, when simply being conscious and aware in this new universe was such a wonder that nothing else was needed. The Titans were like children who have just woken in a safe home, with no demands upon them, free to simply marvel at the fact that they exist at all, that there is such a thing as seeing and hearing and feeling and being. Section 3. Demeter and Persephone, the cycle of seasons. Let us turn now to a story of love between mother and daughter. A tale that explains why the world has seasons, why spring always returns after winter, why hope persists even in the darkest times. It is a story of separation and reunion, of grief and joy, told in the rhythm of the turning year itself. Demeter was the goddess of the harvest, of golden wheat and barley, of fruit trees heavy with apples and pears, of grapevines that climbed toward the sun and produced their purple treasures each autumn. She was nurturing and generous, ensuring that the earth provided abundantly for all who walked upon it. Her hair was the color of ripe grain, her eyes the green of spring leaves, her hands always warm and gentle, smelling of fresh bread and honey. She had a daughter named Persephone, and if Demeter was the abundance of harvest, Persephone was the freshness of spring itself. Imagine a young woman who embodied everything new and growing, the first flower pushing through snow, the first green shoot of grass, the baby birds hatching in their nests. Persephone's laughter was like the sound of a brook over stones, her smile like the sun breaking through April clouds. Mother and daughter were inseparable. walking together through meadows, always at the peak of their beauty, where flowers bloomed in profusion and the air was thick with the scent of growth and life. They would talk about small, peaceful things, which flowers were prettiest, where the best wild strawberries grew, how the clouds today looked like dolphins or horses or castles in the air. These were days of perfect contentment, each moment precious precisely because it was so simple, so free of drama or complication. One day, and this was the day that would change everything. Though it began like any other, Persephone wandered into a meadow she had never visited before. It was a place of extraordinary beauty, where the grass grew soft as silk and flowers of every imaginable color swayed in a gentle breeze. There were roses and violets, lilies and iris, crocuses and hyacinths, each bloom perfect, each fragrance adding to the sweet perfume of the air. In the center of this meadow grew a flower unlike any other, a narcissus of incredible beauty, with petals that seemed to glow from within, radiating a soft light like captured moonbeams. Persephone was drawn to it as inevitably as water flows downhill, as naturally as breath follows breath. She knelt before it, reaching out her hand to pluck it, wanting to bring this extraordinary bloom to her mother, to add it to their collection of beautiful things. The moment her fingers touched the stem, the earth opened. Not violently, not with earthquake or explosion, but with a smooth, quiet inevitability, the ground simply parting like curtains being drawn aside. From this opening emerged Hades, god of the underworld, in his chariot drawn by immortal black horses that moved as silently as shadows. Now, let us imagine Hades not as a villain, but as a lonely deity who had fallen in love with Persephone from afar, watching her from his dark kingdom and seeing in her all the light and life that his realm of shadows lacked. He took her hand not with cruelty but with desperation, the act of someone who has been alone for too long and sees a chance, however wrong, for companionship. In a moment they were gone, the earth closing behind them as smoothly as it had opened, leaving only the narcissus fallen on the grass as evidence that anything had happened at all, when Demeter realized her daughter was missing. Her grief was like nothing the world had ever known. She searched everywhere, through forests and over mountains, along riverbanks and seashores, calling Persephone's name until her voice grew hoarse, until the sun and moon had crossed the sky 9 times. She did not eat or drink or sleep, driven only by a mother's desperate love, refusing to rest until she found her child. As Demeter grieved, her power waned. The crops began to fail. The trees stopped bearing fruit. The grass turned brown and brittle. No seed would sprout. No flower would bloom. The earth itself seemed to mourn with her, withholding its abundance in sympathy with her sorrow. Humans began to go hungry, their prayers to the gods becoming desperate as their stores of grain ran low and their livestock grew thin. Finally, Demeter learned the truth from Helios, the all-seeing sun, who had witnessed everything from his daily journey across the sky. He told her gently that Hades had taken Persephone to be his bride, that she now sat on a throne in the underworld, crowned as queen of the dead. This news brought both relief, for at least Persephone lived, and despair, for how could anyone return from the land of death? Demeter went to Zeus, king of the gods, and demanded her daughter's return. Zeus, seeing the devastation that Demeter's grief had brought to the earth, agreed to help. He sent Hermes, the swift messenger god, down into the shadowy depths to bring Persephone home. Imagine Hermes descending through the dark, his winged sandals carrying him past the river Styx, past the guardian Cerberus, into the very throne room of Hades himself, in the underworld. Persephone had been not happy, but perhaps not entirely miserable either. Hades, in his way, treated her with respect and kindness, trying to make his dark realm as comfortable for her as possible. He showed her the fields of Asphodel, where ordinary souls wandered, the Elysian fields, where heroes rested in eternal peace, the strange and shadowy beauties of his kingdom. And gradually, Persephone had adapted, as living things can adapt to almost anything, finding a quiet dignity in her new role. But when Hermes arrived with news that she could return to her mother, Persephone's heart leaped with joy. She rose immediately to go, but Hades asked her to wait for just a moment. He produced a pomegranate, that jeweled fruit filled with ruby-red seeds, like tiny garnets, and offered it to her. "Eat with me one last time," he said, and whether from courtesy or hunger, or some impulse she didn't quite understand, Persephone ate 6 pomegranate seeds. This was significant, for ancient law held that anyone who ate food in the underworld would be bound to it forever. When Demeter learned her daughter had eaten the seeds, her joy at the reunion turned to anguish. But Zeus, wise and fair, proposed a compromise. Because Persephone had eaten 6 seeds, she would spend 6 months of each year in the underworld with Hades, and 6 months on the surface with her mother. And so the cycle of seasons was born. When Persephone descended into the underworld, Demeter mourned, and the world entered autumn and winter. The trees shed their leaves, the air grew cold, and the earth became hard and cold. And all growth ceased as the goddess of harvest withdrew her bounty in her grief. But whenever Persephone returned in the spring, Demeter's joy caused the flowers to bloom, the trees to bud and blossom, the fields to turn green, and nature to be reborn. The whole world celebrated the reunion of mother and daughter with great joy. Imagine that first spring when Persephone returned. Picture Demeter waiting at the entrance to the underworld, trembling with anticipation. When her daughter emerged, pale from her time in shadows, but smiling, the two ran to each other and embraced, and in that moment, every flower in the world opened simultaneously. Every bird began to sing, every stream swelled with snowmelt, every creature emerged from winter's sleep. It was the earth itself rejoicing, nature responding to love the way it always does, with abundance and beauty and renewed life, even now. In the cycle of our own year, this story plays out. Each autumn is Demeter's grief beginning. Each winter is her mourning in full. Each spring is her joy at reunion. Each summer is the celebration of togetherness. The story teaches us that loss and return are natural rhythms, that after every winter comes spring, that separation is painful but reunion is sweet, that even grief has its season and its end. As you rest now, think of yourself like the earth in winter, letting go of what was, resting deeply, trusting that spring will come again, that renewal is always possible, that rest itself is preparation for new growth. Sleep is the winter of consciousness, necessary and healing, and morning will be your spring. But for now, let yourself sink into this gentle darkness, this peaceful dormancy, knowing that it is exactly what you need. Section 4. Orpheus and Eurydice. The power of love and music. Now, we turn to a story of music and love, of loss and longing, of a journey into darkness driven by devotion. This is the tale of Orpheus, whose music could charm stones and tame wild beasts, and Eurydice, the woman he loved more than life itself. Orpheus was the son of one of the Muses Calliope, muse of epic poetry, and his gift for music was beyond mortal comprehension. When he played his lyre, rivers would pause in their flowing to listen. Trees would lean toward him, their leaves rustling in rhythm to his melodies. Birds would fall silent, not from fear, but from reverence, understanding that their own songs were mere shadows compared to his. Even rocks, those most stolid and unchanging things, would seem to soften, to become somehow more alive in his presence. His lyre was no ordinary instrument. It had been given to him by Apollo himself, the god of music, and it had 7 strings, each one tuned to a note of the celestial scale, each one capable of expressing emotions so subtle and complex that language had no words for them. When Orpheus played, he could convey not just joy or sorrow, but the exact quality of a particular joy, the specific shade of a certain sorrow, the happiness of seeing an old friend unexpectedly, the grief of watching summer end, the sweet melancholy of remembering things long past. Eurydice was a dryad, a nymph of the oak trees, and when Orpheus first saw her, she was dancing in a forest glade, her hair woven with leaves, her feet barely touching the moss-covered ground. She moved with the natural grace of wind through branches, and when she laughed, it sounded like wind chimes made of silver and glass. Orpheus fell in love instantly, completely, with the kind of love that transforms everything, that makes colors brighter and the air sweeter and existence itself suddenly overwhelmingly worthwhile. He courted her with music, playing songs that expressed everything he felt but could not say, melodies that spoke of admiration and tenderness and wonder. Eurydice, who had heard the music of rustling leaves and falling rain and wind through grass all her life, had never heard anything like Orpheus's lyre. It spoke directly to her soul, bypassing thought entirely, and she found herself falling in love with him, just as completely as he had fallen for her. Their wedding was a celebration of beauty. All the gods attended, bringing gifts and blessings. The muses sang in harmony. Apollo played alongside his student. Flowers bloomed out of season, filling the air with their perfume. The sun seemed to shine more warmly, and the wine tasted of liquid happiness. It was a perfect day, and as evening fell and the stars emerged one by one, Orpheus and Eurydice danced together under the heavens, so in love that they seemed to radiate light. But happiness in mythology is often fragile, and fate had other plans. One day, shortly after the wedding, Eurydice was walking through a meadow, her customary joy making her steps light. She did not notice the viper hidden in the grass, coiled and waiting. When she stepped near it, the snake struck, its fangs sinking into her ankle, its venom entering her bloodstream faster than thought. Eurydice had time for one cry before she fell, and that cry reached Orpheus where he sat composing nearby. He ran to her, reaching her just in time to hold her as the venom did its work. He tried to play his lyre, hoping his music might heal her, might reverse the snake's bite, but though his notes were heartbreaking in their beauty, they could not hold back death. Eurydice died in his arms, her last words assuring him of her love, her spirit departing so gently it was like a candle being blown out by a soft breeze. Orpheus's grief was absolute. He could not accept her death, could not imagine continuing existence without her. He tried to play music, but found only dissonance. He tried to sing, but could only weep. For days he wandered, hollow-eyed and hollow-hearted, unable to eat or sleep, replaying endlessly in his mind those last moments, wishing desperately that he could have one more chance one more conversation, one more day with his beloved, and then, in his desperation, an idea came to him, impossible, unprecedented, but driven by love too strong to accept defeat. He would go to the underworld. He would find Eurydice among the dead, and he would bring her back. The journey to the underworld was not easy to undertake for a living person. Orpheus had to find one of the hidden entrances, cracks in the earth that led down into darkness. He chose a cave mouth that breathed cold air, that seemed to exhale the very breath of death, and he descended, his lyre in his hands, his heart set on his purpose. Down he went, through caverns that grew darker and colder, past underground rivers that flowed with strange, thick water, through passages so narrow he had to squeeze through sideways, into chasms so vast he could not see their walls or ceilings. Strange sounds echoed around him, whispers in forgotten languages, the drip of water in hidden pools, the distant rush of great rivers. Finally, he reached the river Styx, that boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. The ferryman Charon stood there with his boat, ancient and grim, his face hidden in shadow. Charon had never ferried a living person across, and he refused Orpheus now, his voice like grinding stones. Only the dead may cross. Return to the surface, mortal, while you still can. But Orpheus lifted his lyre and began to play. He played a song of longing, of love that transcends death, of the journey he had undertaken. The music floated across the dark water, and something in it softened even Charon's ancient heart. Without a word, the ferryman gestured to his boat, and Orpheus climbed aboard. They crossed in silence, the only sound the gentle splash of the oar and the continuing notes of the lyre. On the far shore, Orpheus faced Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the gates of Hades' realm. Each head was vicious, each mouth filled with teeth like daggers, and the beast had never let anyone pass without permission. But Orpheus played for Cerberus a lullaby, a gentle song that spoke of rest and peace and laying down one's burdens. One by one, the three heads drooped, the 6 eyes closed, and the terrible guardian dog lay down and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, its 3 heads resting on its paws. Through the gates Orpheus walked, into the asphodel meadows where ordinary souls drifted like pale mist, into the deeper darkness where the palace of Hades stood. The palace was grand but somber, built of black marble veined with silver, lit by torches that burned with cold, pale flames. Orpheus walked through its corridors, his music echoing off the stone, and every soul who heard it paused, remembering for a moment what it had been like to be alive, to feel deeply, to love and be loved at last. He stood before Hades and Persephone, seated on their thrones in the great hall. Hades' face was stern, Persephone sympathetic. She, after all, knew what it was to be torn from the world above. Orpheus knelt before them and then began to play the most beautiful song of his life. He played of meeting Eurydice, of falling in love, of their wedding day. He played of happiness so pure it hurt, of 2 souls finding completion in each other. Then his music turned dark, becoming the venom of the snake, the moment of her death, the emptiness that followed. He played his grief, his longing, his desperate love that would not accept ending. Every note was true, every phrase genuine, and there was not a soul in all the underworld who heard it and remained unmoved. Tears ran down Persephone's face. The Furies, those ancient spirits of vengeance, wept. Even the tortures in Tartarus paused, those condemned souls getting a moment's respite from their suffering. And Hades himself, lord of the dead, who had thought himself beyond all feeling, felt his iron heart soften. When the last note faded, silence filled the hall. Then Hades spoke. Never before has a living person entered my realm and left alive. Never before has music like yours been heard in these shadowy depths. Because of your love and your courage, I will grant your request. Eurydice may return with you to the land of the living. Orpheus's heart leaped with joy, but Hades raised a hand. There is one condition. Eurydice will walk behind you on the journey back. You must not look back at her. You must not turn around to see if she follows. Not until you have both reached the surface and stand again in sunlight. If you look back even once, she will be lost to you forever. Orpheus agreed immediately, eagerly. How hard could it be, after all, to simply not look back? He would keep his eyes forward, walk steadily, and soon they would be together again in the world of light and life. Hades gestured, and Eurydice appeared, pale and translucent as all the dead are, but smiling, her eyes fixed on her husband with infinite love and trust. The journey back began. Orpheus walked ahead, his heart pounding with hope and love, his every sense straining backward toward Eurydice, though he kept his eyes resolutely forward. Through the palace they walked, through the asphodel meadows, past Cerberus who still slept, across the Styx where Coron ferried them without a word. Up they climbed, through the passages and caverns, and with each step the air grew warmer, the darkness less absolute. Orpheus could sense the surface approaching, could almost smell the fresh air, could almost feel the sunlight. His heart raced with anticipation. They were going to make it. Just a little farther, just a bit more patience. But in that last passage, with the light of the surface visible ahead, doubt crept into Orpheus's mind. He had not heard a single sound from Eurydice behind him. No footstep, no breath, no rustle of movement. What if Hades had deceived him? What if there was no one behind him at all? What if this whole thing had been a cruel trick? The doubt grew, became a certainty, became unbearable. At the very threshold between underworld and surface, with sunlight streaming in and fresh air on his face, Orpheus turned around to see if Eurydice truly followed. She was there, just a step behind him, her hand reaching out toward his. For one perfect moment their eyes met, and in her gaze he saw love and understanding and forgiveness. But they were still in shadow, still technically in the realm of the dead, and the condition had been broken. Eurydice began to fade. "Farewell," she whispered, and there was no anger in her voice, only sorrow and acceptance. "Farewell, my love." And she was gone, pulled back into darkness, back into death, lost to him now forever, with no hope of reprieve. Orpheus tried to follow, tried to descend again, but this time Coron would not ferry him. This time Cerberus would not let him pass. Orpheus returned to the surface alone, heartbroken beyond measure. He never loved again, never sang again with the same joy. His music from then on was always melancholic, always haunted by loss, and those who heard it said it was somehow more beautiful than before, though it hurt to hear it. He would wander the hills and forests, playing for the trees and stones, faithful in his fashion to the memory of his lost love. As you drift toward sleep now, think of how love persists even beyond loss, how beauty can emerge from sorrow, how devotion endures even when its object is gone. Let the sadness of this tale become not distress but a gentle melancholy, A soft emotion that actually helps you relax, helps you let go, helps you slip away into dreams where perhaps, unlike Orpheus, you will find what you seek. And keep it safely. Section 5. The Garden of the Hesperides. A place of eternal rest. Let your mind travel now to the far western edge of the world, past the Mediterranean lands that the Greeks knew, past the pillars of Heracles that marked the end of the known earth, to a place of endless sunset, where day never quite ends but never quite arrives either, where the light is forever golden and the air forever mild. This is the Garden of the Hesperides, one of the most peaceful and beautiful places in all of mythology. The garden exists in that magical state between day and night, in perpetual twilight. The sky above is always painted with streaks of orange and pink and purple, the colors of a perfect sunset that never fades to darkness. The light is soft and warm, creating no harsh shadows, illuminating everything with a gentle radiance that seems to come from the air itself as much as from the sky. In this garden grow apple trees unlike any others in the world. Their bark is silver white, smooth as polished marble, and their leaves are a green so vivid it almost seems to glow. These are no ordinary apple trees. They are the trees that bear the golden apples of immortality, fruits that grant eternal life to any who eat them. The apples themselves hang heavy on the branches, each one perfect, each one catching the light and seeming to hold it, glowing from within like miniature suns. But these apples are not meant for mortal consumption. They belong to the gods, a gift to Hera when she married Zeus, planted by Gaia, the earth herself. To guard these precious fruits, Hera placed the Hesperides nymphs of the evening as the garden's caretakers, along with Ladon, a dragon of 100 heads. The Hesperides are 3 sisters, though some stories say 4 or 7 in myths. Numbers can be fluid, changing like the light itself. Their names are Igor, meaning radiance, Eretheia, meaning the red one, and Hesperathusa, sunset glow. Each sister embodies an aspect of evening's beauty. They dress in robes that shift in color like the sunset sky, wearing flowers in their hair that never wilt, singing songs in voices so clear and pure they could make even the gods pause and listen. Picture them now, these 3 sisters, moving through their garden in a slow, graceful dance that never quite ends. They tend to the trees with love, touching the bark gently, speaking to the branches in soft voices, collecting fallen blossoms and arranging them in patterns on the grass. They move without haste, because in this place, time has a different quality. It passes, but slowly, gently, like honey dripping from a comb. Ladon, the guardian dragon, is coiled around the trunk of the largest apple tree, his 100 heads resting on his coils, each head facing a different direction so that no corner of the garden goes unwatched. But do not imagine him as fierce or frightening. In this peaceful place, even a dragon becomes contemplative. His scales are the color of bronze and gold, catching the eternal twilight and reflecting it back. His eyes, all 100 pairs of them, are watchful but not hostile, observant but not aggressive. He is simply present, aware, a living part of the garden's peace. Occasionally, one of the Hesperides will approach Ladon and stroke one of his great heads, and he will make a sound like a deep, contented purr, like distant thunder on a summer evening. The sisters sing to him sometimes, and his 100 heads sway gently to their music. His presence, as much guardian as companion, as much part of the garden's family as its protector. The garden itself extends farther than the eye can see. Though it is not infinite, it simply seems that way because of the soft light and the way paths curve behind trees and disappear into gentle mists that hover at the edges of vision. There are other trees besides the apple trees, cypresses that reach toward the sky, olive trees twisted into shapes of great age and character, pomegranate trees with their jeweled fruit, fig trees offering their sweet abundance. Between the trees are meadows of the softest grass, starred with flowers of every imaginable color. There are narcissus and hyacinth, asphodel and anemone, roses that bloom in shades of cream and blush and deep crimson, violets hiding beneath leaves. Morning glories that here never close because morning never quite comes. The flowers need no tending, they are eternal, always at the peak of their beauty, never fading, never dying. Through the garden run streams of the clearest water, bubbling up from springs that come from sources deep in the earth. The water is always cool but not cold, refreshing but not shocking, and it tastes faintly of minerals and sweetness, like the best water you have ever drunk. The streams meander through the garden in lazy curves, creating pools here and there where the water is so still it mirrors the sky perfectly, creating the illusion that there is no separation between heaven and earth, that they are one continuous space. In these pools, fish of silver and gold swim in slow circles, their scales catching the light, their movements hypnotic and calming. They are not afraid. Nothing in this garden knows fear, and if you were to reach into the water, they would swim up to investigate your fingers with gentle curiosity, their touch like silk sliding across skin. Birds live in the garden too, though they rarely fly. There is no need for flight here, no predators to escape, no distance to urgently cross. Instead, they hop from branch to branch or walk along the ground with measured steps, pecking occasionally at seeds and fruits. Their songs are gentle, not the loud territorial calls of birds in the mortal world, but soft melodies, conversational chirps, peaceful coos. A nightingale will sing here in long, elaborate phrases, pausing between each to listen to her own echo. Doves murmur to each other in the low branches. Even the crows, usually raucous, are subdued and thoughtful in this place. Beneath the largest apple tree is a place the Hesperides have made especially comfortable, a bower of woven branches and vines, draped with soft moss and flowers, with cushions that seem to have grown naturally from the accumulation of thousands of fallen petals, compressed over time into the softest bedding imaginable. Here the sisters rest when rest is needed, lying back and watching the sky, which never changes and never grows boring, because there is always some new subtlety to notice in the colors, some new pattern in the slowly drifting clouds. From this bower, you can hear all the sounds of the garden at once, the gentle flow of water, the rustling of leaves in a breeze that is always present but never strong, the songs of birds, the occasional sigh from one of Ladon's 100 mouths, the soft voices of the Hesperides as they sing or speak to each other in their ancient language. All these sounds blend together into a symphony of peace, a natural music that needs no composition because it arises spontaneously from the simple existence of beautiful things in harmony. The air in the garden carries multiple fragrances, layering over one another in a way that never becomes overwhelming. There is the scent of apples, both the ripe fruit and the delicate blossoms that somehow exist simultaneously on the same trees. There is the perfume of flowers, roses and jasmine and honeysuckle. There is the fresh, clean smell of flowing water, the earthy scent of moss and rich soil, the subtle fragrance of the cypress and olive trees. Occasionally, the breeze brings a hint of the sea. For the garden, though far inland in the mythic geography, somehow exists close to all things. It is said that to eat one of the golden apples would grant immortality. But perhaps the greater gift would simply be to spend time in this garden, to rest here in its eternal peace, to let the gentle twilight work its magic on a tired soul. Imagine yourself there now, lying in that bower beneath the apple tree, one of Laban's heads resting nearby with eyes half closed in contentment, the Hesperides humming softly somewhere among the trees, the golden light warm on your skin, the soft cushions supporting you perfectly, all the tensions of mortal existence simply dissolving away in this garden. There is no worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow never quite comes. It is always this perfect evening moment, this eternal now. There is no regret about yesterday, because time here does not accumulate burden. There is only presence, only peace, only the gentle awareness of beauty all around. Beauty that asks nothing of you except that you receive it, that you let it work its healing magic. The Hesperides, those ancient sisters who have tended this place since the beginning of time, know the secret that mortals always forget, that peace does not come from having everything you want, but from wanting nothing but what this moment offers. They ask for nothing beyond their garden, desire nothing except to continue their slow dance through its pathways, to sing their songs to the trees and the dragon, to watch the unchanging sky with fresh wonder each time, as you rest now in your own bed. Let this garden exist in your mind's eye. Let yourself feel that you have somehow been granted access to this secret place, that you lie now beneath those trees, that this peace is available to you, not just in imagination but in the very real peace of your relaxed body and quieting mind. The golden apples need not be eaten to grant their blessing. Simply being in their presence is enough. Simply resting in this perfect twilight is its own form of immortality, a moment of peace that expands to fill all time. Section 6. Endymion, the eternal dreamer. Turn your attention now to a story about sleep itself, about a love between moon and mortal, about the blessing of eternal rest. This is the tale of Endymion, the beautiful shepherd who won the love of Selene, goddess of the moon, and whose reward was the most perfect sleep imaginable. Lasting forever, Endymion was a young shepherd who lived on Mount Latmus, tending his flocks in the high pastures where the air was thin and clear and the stars seemed close enough to touch. He was remarkable not for any great deeds or heroic acts, but simply for his beauty, a gentle, peaceful beauty that came from a soul at ease with itself and the world. When Endymion tended his sheep, he did so with patience and care, learning each animal's individual personality, speaking to them in a soft voice that calmed even the most skittish lamb. He would often lie in the mountain grass during the day, watching the clouds drift past, noting the patterns of birds in flight, listening to the wind through the pines. At night, when his duties were done and his flock was settled and safe, he would lie on his back and watch the stars emerge one by one, naming them to himself, making up stories about the constellations, feeling a deep contentment with this simple life of watching and tending, of being present to the slow rhythms of nature. Selene, the moon goddess, drove her silver chariot across the night sky every evening, pulled by white horses whose hooves made no sound, whose movement was as smooth as silk sliding across skin. She had done this for countless ages, watching the earth below, observing the lives of mortals as they played out their brief, intense existences, She had seen civilizations rise and fall, had watched heroes perform great deeds and tyrants commit terrible crimes, had observed lovers meet and part, had witnessed the full spectrum of human joy and sorrow from her distant vantage point. One night, as she drove her chariot over Mount Latmus, her light fell upon Endymion lying in the grass, asleep after a long day of tending his flocks. The moonlight illuminated him, and Selene, looking down, felt her immortal heart suddenly, inexplicably, move with an emotion she had never experienced before. He looked so peaceful in sleep, so beautiful in his unconscious vulnerability. His face relaxed, his breathing deep and even, his body completely at rest, night after night. Selene found herself steering her chariot to pass over Mount Latmos, lingering there as long as she could before duty called her onward. She would slow her horses to a walk, extending the moments she could gaze upon this sleeping shepherd. She began to love everything about him, the way one hand curled near his face, the slight smile that sometimes crossed his lips as he dreamed, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the way the breeze would move his hair. Finally, unable to contain her love any longer, Selene descended from her chariot one night, leaving it parked in the sky with her horses patient and waiting. She came down to Mount Latmos, her feet making no sound on the grass, her presence a concentration of moonlight more brilliant than the usual scattered glow. She knelt beside Endymion and, for the first time, touched a mortal, her cool fingers brushing his cheek with infinite tenderness. Endymion stirred and opened his eyes, and what he saw took his breath away. A woman of impossible beauty, luminous with her own light, her hair the color of silver starlight, her eyes deep as the night sky but warm with love. For a moment, neither spoke, caught in that perfect instant of mutual recognition when two souls acknowledge each other. They talked through that night, Selene telling him of her lonely travels across the sky, Endymion sharing his peaceful life among the mountains and sheep. They talked until the first hints of dawn began to touch the eastern horizon, and Selene, who could not be present in daylight, kissed him gently and returned to her chariot, promising to return the next night. And so began a love affair between goddess and mortal, Selene descending each night to spend what time she could with Endymion before dawn forced her to depart. They would lie together in the mountain grass, talking of everything and nothing, Endymion sharing his simple observations about the natural world, Selene describing the cosmic perspective from her nightly journeys. They would walk together through the moonlit meadows, hand in hand, finding joy in simple presence, in being together. But Selene, being immortal, began to face a terrible reality. Endymion, being mortal, would age. Already she could see the first tiny lines beginning to form at the corners of his eyes, evidence of time's relentless march. The thought of watching him grow old, watching the beauty she loved fade and wrinkle, watching him eventually die, was unbearable. She loved him too much to let time steal him away. Selene went to Zeus, king of the gods, and begged him for a favor. "Let Endymion be immortal," she pleaded, "so that I need not lose him to time." But Zeus, wise in the ways of such requests, shook his head. "Immortality is not so simple a gift," he said. "The mortals who have received it have often found it a burden. They watch everyone they know die. They grow weary of existence. They become jaded and cynical. Would you truly want that for your beloved?" Selene thought about this and realized he was right. She did not want Endymion to become like some of the immortals she knew, world-weary and bored. Their long existence having stripped away the ability to marvel at simple things. It was precisely his mortal perspective, his ability to find profound joy in a sunset or a flower or a moment of connection, that made him who he was. Then grant him eternal youth, Selene suggested, so that he will not age, and I can love him as he is forever. But again Zeus shook his head. Consider what that means, he said. An eternity of conscious existence. Every friend he makes will die. Every connection he forms will be lost to time. And you yourself cannot be with him always. You have your duties, your nightly journey across the sky. He would be essentially alone, watching the world change around him, unable to truly belong to any era. Selene fell silent, seeing the trap, understanding the problem. What gift could preserve her love without destroying what she loved about him? Finally, she asked, what if he could sleep? Eternal youth, but spent in eternal sleep, so he need never know loneliness or loss, need never grow weary of existence. And I could visit him each night, see him as he is now, perfect and peaceful, forever. Zeus considered this and found it acceptable. If Endymion himself agrees, he said, I will grant this. But he must choose it freely, understanding what he accepts. Selene returned to Mount Latmus and explained the situation to Endymion, presenting him with the choice: live out his mortal life, growing old and eventually dying, their love bounded by the natural limits of his existence, or accept eternal sleep, eternal youth, never again to wake, but also never to suffer, never to age, never to end. Visited each night by the moon goddess who loved him, Endymion thought deeply about this choice. He thought about the life he had known, simple, peaceful, satisfying in its way. He thought about the uncertainty of the future, the inevitable decay of the body, the losses that would accumulate with age. And he thought about Selene, about the love he felt for her, about how perfect their nights together had been, how deeply content he felt in her presence. I will sleep, he said finally, for in sleep I am already closer to happiness than in any waking moment. And if you will visit my dreams, then my dreams will be sweeter than any waking reality could be. And so it was arranged. Zeus blessed Endymion with eternal youth and eternal sleep, and the young shepherd lay down in a cave on Mount Latmos, arranged himself comfortably, and closed his eyes. His breathing slowed and deepened, his body relaxed completely, and he entered into a sleep from which he would never wake, a sleep that would last as long as the earth itself existed. Each night since then, Selene has driven her chariot over Mount Latmus and descended to visit her sleeping love. She enters the cave where he lies, looking exactly as he did that first night when she fell in love with him, and she sits beside him, sometimes for just a few moments, sometimes for hours, depending on the seasons and her duties. She strokes his hair, whispers stories of what she has seen in her travels, tells him the news of the world though he cannot hear. The Greeks said that when the moon seems especially bright and beautiful, it is because Selene is happy, having just visited Endymion. When the moon seems dim or veiled in clouds, it is because she is sad, missing her beloved, wishing she could spend more time with him. The waxing and waning of the moon reflects her emotional cycle, growing bright as the night of her visit approaches, then diminishing again as she moves away. Endymion, in his eternal sleep, knows no loneliness, no pain, no loss. He dreams continuously, and his dreams are influenced by Selene's presence. He dreams of flying through starlit skies, of walking on the moon's silver surface, of conversations that last for centuries and feel like moments. He dreams of love that needs no consummation because it is already complete, of peace that requires no maintenance because it is eternal. He is, in his way, perfectly happy, and his sleep is an inspiration to all who seek rest. The cave where Endymion sleeps is said to be peaceful beyond description, a place where the air itself seems to encourage rest, where anyone who enters feels their eyelids grow heavy, where sleep comes easily and dreams are sweet. Shepherds in ancient times would sometimes make pilgrimages there, hoping to absorb some of that perfect rest, to learn the secret of sleeping as deeply and peacefully as the legendary Endymion. As you lie in your own bed now, think of yourself as Endymion, blessed with the opportunity for perfect rest, visited by benevolent forces that wish you only peace and sweet dreams. Feel your body becoming still and comfortable, your breathing deepening, your mind letting go of consciousness. Accepting sleep as Endymion did, not as an interruption of life, but as its own form of blessing, its own kind of perfect existence. Let yourself sink into that eternal now where nothing is required of you except to rest, to dream, to be at peace. Section 7. The Voyage of Odysseus. Peaceful moments in an epic journey. Let us turn now to one of the most famous tales of Greek mythology. But let us focus not on the battles or the monsters, not on the dangers or the triumphs, but on the quiet moments, the peaceful interludes in the long journey home. This is the story of Odysseus's voyage, told for rest and relaxation. After 10 years of war at Troy, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, began his journey home to his wife Penelope and son Telemachus. He expected the voyage to take a few weeks at most. Instead, it would take 10 more years, a decade of wandering across the wind-dark sea, visiting strange islands and encountering the supernatural. But between the adventures were long stretches of simple sailing, of wind and water and time to think. And it is these moments we will dwell on. Picture Odysseus's ship cutting through calm waters, the sail full of a steady breeze, the sun warm but not hot, the sky a perfect blue dome overhead with just a few wispy clouds trailing across it like threads of white silk. The ship creaks gently, flexing with the waves, a rhythmic sound that becomes almost musical after a while, a percussion that accompanies the swish of water along the hull. The crew fewer in number as the journey progressed, but still loyal would fall into the rhythms of life at sea. There were watchers to stand, ropes to coil, sails to adjust, but much of the time was simply spent sitting, watching the horizon, letting the mind drift as the ship drifted on its course. Some of the men would tell stories to pass the time, tales of their homes and families, memories of childhood, plans for what they would do when they finally returned. Odysseus himself, clever and troubled, would often stand at the prow of the ship, one hand on the forestay, staring out at the endless water. He was a complex man, capable of great cunning and great compassion, burdened by the decisions he had made, haunted by the lives lost under his command. But in these quiet moments at sea, with only the elements for company, he would sometimes find a measure of peace. The sea in its vastness made his problems seem smaller, more manageable. The steady progress of the ship, even if the destination remained distant, provided a sense of purpose. One of the most peaceful episodes in Odysseus's journey was his time on Odysseia, the island of the nymph Calypso, after a terrible storm destroyed his ship and drowned all his remaining companions. Odysseus washed up alone on this remote island, barely alive. Calypso found him on the beach, took him to her cave and nursed him back to health. Calypso's island was a paradise, a place where fruit trees grew in abundance, where fresh water bubbled from springs, where the air was always mild and flowers always bloomed. Her cave was comfortable beyond mortal expectation, furnished with soft pelts and woven blankets, always the perfect temperature, lit by a warm, gentle light that seemed to have no source. Outside the cave grew poplars and alders, and grapevines climbed toward the sun, their purple clusters hanging heavy and ripe. Calypso herself was beautiful, immortal, and lonely. She had lived on this island alone for countless years, and in Odysseus she saw a companion, someone to share her paradise, someone to talk to and laugh with and love. She offered him immortality if he would stay with her, offered to make him ageless and deathless, to spend eternity together on this perfect island. For 7 years, Odysseus remained with Calypso. By day, they would walk along the beaches of white sand, swim in the warm, clear water, pick fruit from the trees, lie in the sun, and talk. Calypso was intelligent and well-informed. Gods and nymphs hear the news of the world even in their remote places, and she would tell Odysseus of events in the wider world, of what had become of his fellow heroes from Troy, of the political changes in Greece. In the evenings, they would recline in her cave, eating the simple but delicious food she prepared, drinking wine that never caused hangovers, talking and laughing until late, then falling asleep to the sound of gentle waves on the shore. It was, in its way, a perfect existence, and Calypso loved Odysseus deeply, hoping he would eventually accept her offer and remain with her forever. But Odysseus, despite the peace and comfort of ocean, despite Calypso's love and the island's beauty, could not forget his true home. He had a wife waiting for him, a son he had barely known, a kingdom that needed its king. Every day he would sit on the rocks by the shore, looking out toward the horizon in the direction of Ithaca, longing for home with an ache that even paradise could not ease. Calypso, who truly loved him, eventually recognized this. As much as she wanted him to stay, she understood that keeping him there against his deepest wishes was a form of imprisonment, however beautiful the prison. With the gods' permission and blessing, she released him, helping him build a raft, provisioning it with food and water, even conjuring a favorable wind to speed him on his way. Odysseus's departure from Ogygia was bittersweet. He was grateful to Calypso, genuinely fond of her, appreciative of the years of peace she had given him when he needed healing. But the pull of home was stronger than the pull of paradise, and as he sailed away on his raft, looking back at the dwindling island, he felt relief mixed with a touch of regret, a recognition that he was leaving something precious behind. Another peaceful moment in Odysseus's journey came earlier, at the land of the Lotus Eaters. After a storm, the ships landed on an island whose inhabitants were friendly and welcoming. The natives offered Odysseus's scouts lotus fruit to eat, and those who ate it fell into a dreamy, contented state where they forgot about returning home, forgot about their missions and duties, wanting only to remain on the island forever, eating lotus and dwelling in a haze of peaceful forgetfulness. While the story usually emphasizes how Odysseus had to drag his men back to the ships, forcing them to leave against their will, there is something to consider about what the lotus offered: a respite from struggle, a cessation of worry, a simple contentment with the present moment. The Lotus Eaters themselves were not lazy or irresponsible. They simply lived without anxiety, without ambition, without the constant striving that characterized much of Greek heroic culture, Asterisk, asterisk. Imagine what that lotus state felt like, lying in a meadow, looking up at the sky, chewing the sweet fruit, and feeling all concerns drift away like dandelion seeds on the breeze. No worry about the future, no regret about the past. Just the warmth of the sun and the softness of the grass, and a feeling of complete, absolute okayness with everything. It was a seductive peace, a dangerous contentment that would have ended Odysseus's journey if he had given into it. But perhaps there is a middle way, a lesson we can take from both Calypso's island and the Lotus Eater's land. Sometimes we need rest, need to pause our journeys, need to stop striving and simply be. The danger comes not from the rest itself, but from forgetting that we chose it, from losing sight of our deeper purposes. Rest is necessary and healing, but it's healthiest when we know we can choose to rise again when we're ready. Another peaceful image from Odysseus's journey comes from a moment of pure sailing. Somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean, when the wind was favorable and the sea was calm and the ship moved steadily forward with no effort required from the crew. These moments were rare in Odysseus's troubled voyage, but when they came, they were precious. The men would relax at their oars, some sleeping in the sun, others talking quietly or working on small tasks, mending clothes, repairing rope, carving wood into small objects, as sailors do. Odysseus himself might take a turn at the steering oar, feeling the ship respond to his touch, sensing through the wood the forces of wind and water, making tiny adjustments to keep the ship on course. There is a meditation in this, a mindfulness that comes from being fully engaged in a simple physical task that requires attention but not intense thought. The mind can rest while the body works, finding a different kind of peace than sleep provides. The sound of water along the hull, the creak of rope and timber, the flutter of the sail, the cry of seabirds following the ship, these sounds blended into a symphony that was the music of voyaging, a soundtrack that Odysseus and his men heard for years, until it became as familiar as their own heartbeats, as natural as breathing, when Odysseus finally reached Ithaca after his 20 years away. When he finally stepped onto the shore of his homeland, he knelt and kissed the ground, overcome with emotion. But that first night, before he revealed himself to anyone, before the battle to reclaim his throne, he slept in a shepherd's hut, wrapped in simple wool, listening to the sounds of his island, sounds he had remembered through all his wanderings, sounds that meant home more than any palace or treasure could dot. As you drift towards sleep now, think of yourself as a voyager who has finally reached harbor, who can drop anchor and rest, who need not sail anymore tonight, but can simply be still, be safe, be home. Let the gentle rocking of your breathing be like the rocking of a ship at anchor in a calm bay, secured and peaceful, ready for rest. The journey of today is over. The voyage of tomorrow hasn't begun. Right now, in this moment, you can simply be at peace, like Odysseus in that shepherd's hut, safe on Ithaca's soil at last. Section 8. Psyche and Eros, love, trust, and transformation. Now we come to a story of love conquering all obstacles, of a mortal woman's journey to become something more, of trust and betrayal and forgiveness. This is the tale of Psyche, whose name means soul, and Eros, the god of love himself. Psyche was the youngest of 3 princesses, daughters of a mortal king. Her 2 older sisters were beautiful, much admired and courted by nobles and princes from many lands. But Psyche was so extraordinarily beautiful that people compared her to Aphrodite herself, goddess of beauty and love. Temples to Aphrodite stood empty as people instead brought their offerings to gaze upon Psyche, declaring her beauty divine. This comparison enraged Aphrodite. As gods are often sensitive about their domains being encroached upon by mortals, she decided to punish Psyche for this presumption, even though Psyche herself had done nothing wrong and was, in fact, uncomfortable with the excessive attention and praise. Aphrodite called her son Eros and commanded him to shoot Psyche with one of his arrows, making her fall in love with the most hideous, unworthy creature he could find. Eros, dutiful son that he was, flew to observe Psyche and prepare to carry out his mother's command. But when he saw her, he was struck by her beauty, not just physical beauty, but a quality of kindness and gentleness that radiated from her. In his surprise and distraction, he accidentally scratched himself with his own arrow, and fell instantly, completely, irrevocably in love with her. Now, torn between duty to his mother and his own unexpected love, decided on a complex plan. He arranged for an oracle to tell Psyche's father that his daughter was destined to marry not a mortal man but a creature, and that she should be left on a certain mountaintop where her husband would come to claim her. This sounded like a terrible fate, and Psyche's parents wept, but they obeyed the oracle, believing it was the will of the gods, dressed in funeral garments, for this seemed more like a death than a wedding. Psyche was led to the mountaintop and left alone. She stood there in the darkness, terrified and alone, waiting for the monster she believed would claim her. But instead of a monster, Zephyrus, the gentle west wind, came and lifted her softly, carrying her through the air as gently as a mother carries a sleeping child, and set her down in a valley where stood a palace, more beautiful than any mortal structure. The palace was made of gold and precious stones, its columns carved from single pieces of marble, its floors inlaid with jewels arranged in patterns that seemed to shift and change as you looked at them. Gardens surrounded it, filled with every beautiful flower, every fruit tree, fountains that played with water that caught the light and threw rainbows through the air. And though Psyche saw no servants, invisible hands attended to her every need. Doors opened before her, baths were drawn, food appeared on tables, music played from unseen instruments. Night. In darkness, her mysterious husband came to her. She could not see him, for he had made her promise never to look upon his face or attempt to discover his identity. But his voice was gentle and loving, his touch tender, and his conversations with her were intelligent and engaging. He told her she could have anything she wanted, that this palace and its gardens were hers, that her only duty was to be happy and enjoy her new life. The only condition was that she must never try to see who he was, never light a lamp when he was with her. For a time, Psyche was content. The days were peaceful and pleasant, filled with exploration of the palace and gardens, with reading from the extensive library, with bathing in the luxurious baths, with eating delicious foods and listening to beautiful music. The nights were filled with her husband's company, with their conversations and their love. She began to genuinely care for this mysterious being, began to trust that he meant her no harm, began to be happy. But isolation, even in a paradise, can be lonely. Psyche missed her sisters, missed having someone to talk to during the day, missed the human contact that her invisible servants couldn't provide. She asked her husband if her sisters could visit, and though he warned her that no good would come of it, he agreed, loving her enough to give her what she asked for, even knowing it might lead to disaster. Zephyrus brought her sisters to the palace, and at first they were amazed by its beauty and happy to see Psyche alive and well. But as they toured the grounds and saw the wealth and luxury in which their youngest sister lived, jealousy began to poison their hearts. They asked about her husband, and Psyche, constrained by her promise, could tell them little. This made them suspicious and gave them an opening for mischief. If he won't show himself, they told her, it must be because he is hideous, or perhaps monstrous. Perhaps the oracle was right, and you have married some terrible creature. You should look upon him while he sleeps, and if he is indeed a monster, you should kill him before he kills you. They planted seeds of doubt and fear, and though Psyche resisted at first, the seeds took root and grew. That night, after her husband had fallen asleep beside her, Psyche rose from the bed. Her hands trembling, she lit an oil lamp and held it up to see, finally, who her mysterious husband was. The light fell upon the most beautiful being she had ever seen, Eros himself. The god of love, wings of pure white folded at his back, his face perfect in its beauty, peaceful in sleep. Psyche was overcome with relief and wonder and love, but in her trembling, a drop of hot oil from the lamp fell onto Eros's shoulder. He woke with a cry of pain and, seeing the lamp in her hand, understood immediately what had happened. The look of betrayal and hurt in his eyes was worse than any wound the oil had caused. Love cannot live where there is no trust, he said, and though his voice was gentle, it carried infinite sadness. I asked only one thing of you, and you have broken your promise. I must leave, and you will not see me again. And with that, he spread his wings and flew away into the night, leaving Psyche alone in the palace that suddenly seemed cold and empty. In the morning, when Psyche woke, the palace was gone. She found herself lying on bare ground. The magical building and gardens vanished as completely as if they had never existed. Overcome with grief and regret, she wandered until she came to a river and, in her despair, threw herself into it, wanting only to end her pain. But the river, taking pity on her, carried her gently to its bank instead of letting her drown. The reeds whispered to her that giving up was not the answer, that she must fight for her love, must prove herself worthy of the god she had betrayed. And so Psyche began a new journey, not toward death, but toward redemption, toward becoming someone worthy of Eros's love. Her journey led her eventually to a temple of Aphrodite. The goddess, still angry, saw an opportunity to punish the girl who had stolen her son's heart. You want Eros back? Aphrodite said with a cruel smile. Then you must complete 4 tasks for me. Succeed, and I will consider your case. Fail, and you will never see my son again. The first task was to sort a huge pile of mixed seeds, wheat, barley, millet, poppy, lentils, and beans, all jumbled together in a massive heap. The pile was enormous, and Aphrodite gave Psyche only until sunset to complete the task. It seemed impossible, but as Psyche sat down and began, tears streaming down her face, an army of ants took pity on her. They emerged from the ground by the thousands, each ant carrying 1 seed at a time, working with tiny industry to sort the pile into neat groups. By sunset, the task was complete. The second task sent Psyche to gather golden fleece from a flock of violent sun-mad rams that grazed in a meadow by a river. The rams were dangerous, their horns sharp, their tempers fierce during the heat of the day. But a river reed whispered advice to Psyche: wait until evening. When the rams have retreated to shade and their madness has cooled, then you can gather the fleece they have left behind on the thorn bushes they passed. Psyche followed this wisdom and completed the task without harm. The third task required her to fill a crystal flask with water from the river Styx itself, the boundary river of the underworld, which flowed from a high cliff guarded by dragons. This seemed even more impossible than the others, but Zeus's eagle, remembering some kindness Psyche had once shown to a bird, flew to her aid. The great eagle took the flask in its talons, flew to the cliff despite the dragons, and filled it with the sacred water. The fourth and final task was the most dangerous. Psyche must descend into the underworld itself and ask Persephone, Queen of the Dead, for a box of beauty ointment that Aphrodite claimed to need. This task nearly defeated Psyche before she began, for how does a living person enter the land of the dead and return? But a tower she passed spoke to her, giving her detailed instructions where to find the entrance, what coins to bring for Charon the ferryman, how to appease Cerberus the guardian dog, how to refuse help to the various souls who would try to delay her, and most importantly, how to return. Psyche followed these instructions carefully, descending into the shadowy underworld with a strange calm. Perhaps having faced death so many times, having been through so much hardship and trial, she had lost her fear of it. She met Charon and paid him, met Cerberus and soothed him, walked through the fields of asphodel where souls drifted like mist, and finally stood before Persephone's throne. Persephone, who herself knew what it was to be a young woman caught up in divine affairs, was kind to Psyche. She placed a bit of her beauty in a small box and warned Psyche sternly, "Do not open this box. What is inside is not meant for mortals. Deliver it sealed to Aphrodite." Psyche agreed and began her journey back to the surface. But as she walked through the dim passages leading upward, exhaustion and vanity got the better of her. She had been through so much, suffered so long, faced such terrible trials. Surely she must look haggard and worn. If she used just a little of Persephone's beauty ointment, she would be more presentable when she finally saw Eros again. The temptation grew with each step until, almost at the surface, she could resist no longer. She opened the box. Inside was not beauty but an infernal sleep, a deep unconsciousness that overcame her instantly. Psyche collapsed, the open box falling from her hand, and lay as still as death on the path, her trials complete but unable to claim her victory. Eros, meanwhile, had recovered from his burn. His anger had cooled, and his love for Psyche had only grown stronger through their separation. He flew out searching for her and found her lying motionless on the path from the underworld. With tears in his eyes, he gathered the infernal sleep back into its box and sealed it, then kissed Psyche awake. She opened her eyes to see him hovering above her, wings spread, beautiful beyond measure, and love shining in his eyes. "You have proven yourself," he said softly. "You have faced impossible tasks and succeeded. You have shown courage and determination and growth. I should never have asked you to love me without trust, without truth between us. Can you forgive me?" Psyche reached up to touch his face, hardly believing he was real. "Can you forgive me for breaking my promise?" she whispered back, and they held each other, two beings who had hurt each other, learning that love means forgiving, means growing together, means choosing each other again after mistakes have been made. Eros brought Psyche to Mount Olympus, where Zeus himself presided over a great assembly of the gods. Eros pleaded his case before them all, asking that Psyche be made immortal so they could truly be together forever. Zeus, moved by the story and seeing how the trials had transformed Psyche from a passive beauty into an active hero, agreed. He gave Psyche ambrosia to drink, the food of the gods. And as she drank, she transformed, becoming immortal, ageless, divine. Aphrodite, seeing her son's joy and recognizing that Psyche had indeed proven worthy, gave her blessing to the union. A great wedding was held, attended by all the gods. The Muses sang, Apollo played his lyre, and there was feasting and celebration that lasted for days. Psyche, the mortal soul, had become immortal through her trials, her love, her willingness to grow and change and fight for what mattered most. In time, Psyche and Eros had a daughter, whom they named He, which means pleasure or delight. And so the soul, having united with love through trials and forgiveness, gave birth to joy itself, which seems exactly right. Seems like the natural conclusion to a story about becoming your best self through love and challenge and grace. As you rest now, think about how growth sometimes comes through difficulty, but how every trial can be met with help if we're open to it. Ants to sort our chaos, reeds to whisper wisdom, eagles to reach heights we cannot. Think about forgiveness, both of others and yourself, about how love means choosing someone again after mistakes, about how the soul's journey toward love is never easy but always worthwhile. Let these thoughts be gentle as you drift, let them ease you toward sleep as naturally as Psyche drank the ambrosia, transforming your day's consciousness into night's divine rest. Section 9. The Elysian Fields, Paradise for the Blessed. Let us journey now to the most peaceful place in all of Greek mythology, a realm of eternal rest and perfect happiness, where heroes and the blessed go after death to spend eternity in contentment. This is Elysium, also called the Elysian Fields, a paradise that exists at the edge of the world, beyond even the realm of Hades, a place reserved for those who lived virtuously and earned the gods' favor to reach Elysium. Souls must cross the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Unlike the Styx with its dark, fearsome waters, Lethe flows gently, its water clear and cool and sweet-tasting. To drink from it is to forget all pain, all sorrow, all the burdens carried in life. The blessed who drink from Lethe let go of every hurt, every regret, every moment of suffering they endured in mortal existence. They forget their failures and their fears, retaining only the good memories, the moments of love and joy and accomplishment. Imagine that first sip of Lethe's water, cool on the tongue, sweet as spring water after a long thirst, and with it, feeling the weight of a lifetime's worries simply dissolve away. Old grudges, forgotten, past humiliations, erased, the grief of losses, soothed into nothing. What remains is essence, the pure core of the person, without all the accumulated pain that living inevitably brings. It is the ultimate unburdening, the complete release. The final letting go. Beyond Lethe lies Elysium itself, and to describe it is to catalogue every peaceful, beautiful thing you have ever experienced and imagine them all existing together in perfect harmony. The sky above Elysium is forever in that perfect moment between late afternoon and evening, when the sun's light turns golden and everything it touches seems to glow from within. The temperature is always perfect, neither hot nor cold, but that ideal warmth that makes you never think about temperature at all. The landscape of Elysium is gently rolling hills covered in the softest grass, meadows full of flowers that never wilt, groves of trees that give perfect shade without creating gloom. There are rivers and streams running clear over smooth stones, their water always fresh, always cool, always inviting. There are lakes so still and clear they mirror the sky perfectly, creating the illusion that you could step onto them and walk into heaven itself. In Elysium, there is no work because nothing needs maintaining. The grass stays at the perfect height without mowing. The fruit on the trees is always ripe but never falls and rots. Buildings need no repairs. Clothes never wear out or get dirty. Everything simply exists in its ideal state, eternally, requiring no effort, no maintenance, no worry. The blessed who dwell in Elysium spend their time exactly as they wish. Some engage in gentle athletics, running not from necessity, but for the joy of movement. Wrestling not in competition, but in friendly play. Throwing discuses and javelins not to prove superiority, but simply to enjoy the perfection of a physical body that never tires, never aches, never fails. These games have no winners or losers, only participants enjoying movement for its own sake. Others dedicate themselves to music and poetry, forming choruses that sing in perfect harmony, composing new works or perfecting old ones, playing lyres and flutes, not for audiences, but for the simple pleasure of creating beauty. In Elysium, every performance is perfect because there is no nervousness, no judgment, only the pure joy of artistic expression. Even those who had no musical talent in life find themselves able to carry a tune here, able to keep rhythm, able to contribute to the eternal symphony. Some of the blessed simply recline in the meadows, watching the clouds drift across the perfect sky, breathing the flower-scented air, feeling the soft grass beneath them, engaged in the kind of relaxed conversation that meanders from topic to topic without goal or purpose, talking for the pleasure of connection rather than to convey information or win arguments. These conversations can last for what would be days or years in mortal time, time in Elysium being both infinite and irrelevant. There are philosophers in Elysium who discuss eternal questions with infinite patience, never growing frustrated, never growing weary of the debate, finding joy in the examination of ideas without any need to reach conclusions. There are storytellers who have had ages to perfect their craft, who can make even familiar tales seem fresh, who invent new stories or elaborate on old ones, spinning narratives that can last for months and never lose their listeners. Attention. Families separated by death find each other in Elysium and reunite with joy that never fades. Parents see their children again. Lovers find each other. Friends long parted come back together, and there is no awkwardness, no old grievances to overcome, because all has been washed away by Lethe's waters. They recognize each other instantly, perfectly, and fall into embrace with the kind of happiness that mortals only experience in their best dreams. The architecture of Elysium is simple but perfect. There are pavilions with white marble columns, their roofs providing shade without enclosing, allowing breezes to flow through freely. There are comfortable couches strewn with soft cushions where the blessed can recline alone or in groups, reading from an infinite library of scrolls, or simply resting, or engaging in quiet conversation. Gardens in Elysium are masterpieces of beauty. Roses grow in every imaginable color, their fragrance strong but never cloying, their petals soft as silk and immune to thorns. Fountains play with water that catches light and throws rainbows, their gentle splashing the perfect background sound for contemplation or conversation. Fruit trees offer apples and pears and figs and pomegranates, all perfectly ripe, all delicious beyond mortal comparison. There are animals in Elysium, but here they have no fear and no aggression. Deer walk placidly through the meadows and allow themselves to be petted like tame dogs. Birds of every species fly overhead or perch nearby, singing their complex songs, completely unafraid of the blessed who walk beneath them. Even predators like lions exist here in a state of gentle contentment, lounging in the sun, their hunting instincts transformed into playful curiosity at the center of Elysium. Some stories say there grows a great tree, larger than any mortal tree could be, its branches reaching up toward the golden sky, its roots going deep into the earth. This is sometimes called the tree of life, and to rest beneath it is to feel connected to everything that exists, to sense the fundamental unity of all being, to understand without words that everything is part of everything else. That separation is illusion, that on the deepest level, all is one. Beneath this tree, the greatest heroes of myth gather sometimes, Achilles and Patroclus, reunited in death and inseparable. Hector with his family, Ajax and Odysseus, their old quarrels forgotten. Hercules in his aspect as Heracles, the divine hero, resting from his labors at last. They tell their stories to each other, but gently, without bragging, finding humor in adventures that once seemed deadly serious, able to laugh at dangers that have lost all power to harm in Elysium. There is music that seems to come from the air itself, a harmony so subtle and pervasive you only notice it when you specifically listen for it. And then you realize it has been there all along, has always been there, will always be there. It is the music of contentment, the sound that perfect peace would make if peace had a sound. Those who reach Elysium realize that they no longer miss the world of the living. They don't long for the excitement and drama of mortal existence, don't wish for the intensity of emotions that come from mortality's brevity. Instead, they feel a deep satisfaction with this eternal present, this unending peace, this permanent safety from all harm and all suffering. And yet, Greek mythology teaches that even from Elysium, some souls might choose to be reborn, to return to mortal life for another chance at existence in the passionate, complicated, painful, beautiful world of the living. For though Elysium is paradise, there is something about the intensity of mortal life, its brevity making every moment precious, its uncertainty making every choice meaningful, its losses making every love profound, that some souls, after ages of peace, might choose to experience again. But tonight, as you rest, there is no need to think of rebirth or return. Tonight, you can imagine yourself in Elysium, lying in that perfect meadow under that perfect sky, feeling the soft grass beneath you, breathing air that smells of roses and honeysuckle, hearing the gentle music that is peace itself made audible, surrounded by beauty and safety, with nothing required of you except to rest, to be, to exist in perfect peace. Let Elysium be your destination tonight. Let sleep be your river Lethe, washing away the day's burdens, carrying you to that place of ultimate rest. Section 10, Hypnos, and the realm of sleep. We turn now to the god most appropriate for our purposes tonight, Hypnos himself, the divine personification of sleep, son of Nyx, the night, brother of Thanatos, the death, father of dreams. Hypnos is one of the gentlest of all divine beings, his power universal, yet exercised with kindness. His realm one of peace and restoration. Hypnos dwells in a cave at the edge of the world, in a place where the sun's light never reaches, but where darkness is not frightening, but soothing. This cave exists in that liminal space between the waking world and the realm of dreams. accessible to mortals every night, yet impossible to reach while conscious. To enter Hypnos's cave is to fall asleep, and we all make this journey every night of our lives. Though we rarely remember the transition. Approaching the cave, one would first cross through a grove of poplars, their leaves rustling in a breeze that seems to whisper, "Rest, rest, rest," with every movement. These trees are special, planted by Hypnos himself, and their very presence induces drowsiness. Mortals who wander too close to this grove find their eyelids growing heavy, their steps slowing, their thoughts becoming soft and fuzzy around the edges. Beyond the poplars flow the waters of Lethe, that river of forgetfulness we encountered in Elysium. Here, at its source, the water is at its purest, and even the sound of it flowing is soporific, a gentle bubbling and trickling that mimics the rhythm of steady breathing, that encourages the listener to slow their own breath, to match their rhythm to the water's rhythm, to let that synchronization pull them deeper into relaxation. The cave mouth is wide and welcoming, not dark and forbidding, but rather inviting in its dimness, promising shelter and rest to any who enter. Just inside the entrance grow poppies in abundance, red poppies with their black centers, their delicate petals, their association with sleep and dreams. The ancient Greeks knew that opium came from poppies, knew its power to ease pain and induce sleep. And so they associated these flowers with Hypnos himself. The air inside the cave is perfectly temperate, with just enough moisture to feel fresh without being damp, carrying the subtle scent of earth and stone and those poppies at the entrance. There is no wind inside, no drafts, only perfect stillness, perfect quiet except for the distant sound of the river outside, and, if you listen very carefully, the sound of countless sleepers breathing in perfect unison. A soft susurration, like wind through long grass or waves on a distant shore. The cave's floor is covered in moss, softer than any pillow, springy enough to be comfortable but firm enough to support, naturally maintaining the perfect temperature no matter the season outside. Scattered across this mossy floor are thousands upon thousands of sleepers, mortals who have entered Hypnos's realm in their sleep, their bodies remaining in their beds, while some essential part of them rests here in the god's domain. They lie in every position of sleep, some on their backs with hands folded on their chests, some curled on their sides like children, some sprawled in the comfortable abandonment of deep unconsciousness. Their faces are peaceful, all worries smoothed away, their breathing deep and regular. Some smile slightly, enjoying pleasant dreams. Some are perfectly still. All are completely at rest. Hypnos himself moves among the sleepers like a gentle shadow, checking on each one, ensuring their rest is deep and restorative, smoothing away any disturbances that might threaten to wake them. He is depicted as a young man with wings, like his son Morpheus. But where Morpheus is the active crafter of dreams, Hypnos is the passive guardian of rest. His wings are not the white wings of birds, but something closer to the wings of moths or butterflies, dark and soft, and patterned with circles like closed eyes. In one hand, Hypnos carries a branch of poppy flowers, and when he waves this branch over a sleeper, their rest deepens, their dreams become sweeter, their body's healing processes accelerate. In his other hand, he sometimes carries a horn, and from this horn flows the forgetfulness that allows sleep to come, the ability to let go of the day's concerns, to stop planning for tomorrow, to release control and sink into unconsciousness. Hypnos has many children, the Honoroi or dreams, who fly forth from his cave each night to visit sleeping mortals. The most famous of these is Morpheus, who can take any human form, who crafts dreams of people and places and scenarios. But there are other dream spirits too. Phobetor, who creates dreams of animals and monsters. Phantasus, who creates dreams of objects and landscapes. And countless others, each specializing in different aspects of the dream world. These dream spirits emerge from the cave through two gates. One gate is made of horn, and through it fly true dreams, the ones that are meaningful, that carry messages, that reflect reality or predict the future. The other gate is made of polished ivory, and through it fly false dreams, fantasies, wild impossibilities, anxiety dreams that distort reality, nightmares that have no basis in truth. Both kinds of dreams serve purposes. Both are necessary parts of the sleep experience. But Hypnos himself is concerned not with dreams, but with the deeper state beneath them, the dreamless sleep that is most restorative, the unconsciousness so complete that there is no experience of time, no sense of self, only a void that is somehow comforting rather than frightening. This is the sleep that heals most thoroughly, that allows the body to repair itself, that gives the mind its deepest rest. In Hypnos's cave, time has no meaning. A night's sleep might feel like moments or like years. The god ensures that each sleeper gets exactly the rest they need, whether that's a few hours of deep unconsciousness or a longer, gentler rest filled with pleasant dreams. He is not concerned with mortal concepts of time or obligation, only with the purity of rest, the completeness of restoration. There are stories of heroes who sought out Hypnos to request favors. In the most famous, Hera asked Hypnos to put Zeus to sleep so she could interfere in the Trojan War without her husband's knowledge. Hypnos was reluctant. Zeus had punished him once before for such help, but Hera offered him Pasithea, one of the Graces, as a bride, and Hypnos could not resist. The story tells us that even sleep has desires, has motivations, is not just a state but a being with agency. But when Hypnos did put Zeus to sleep, he did it not with force or trickery, but simply by calling upon the natural power of sleep, by reminding even the king of gods that all living things must rest, that consciousness cannot be maintained forever, that there is strength in yielding, wisdom in surrender, health in letting go. Hypnos's twin brother is Thanatos' death, and the Greeks saw the relationship between sleep and death as intimate. Each night when we sleep, we practice dying. We let go of consciousness, surrender, control, trust that we will return. Sleep is little death, they said, and death is eternal sleep. But where death is final and sometimes frightening, sleep is reversible and restorative, a nightly gift that renews us in Hypnos's cave. There is no distinction between rich and poor, powerful and weak, young and old. All sleep the same sleep, all rest the same rest. The emperor and the beggar lie side by side in equal unconsciousness, and Hypnos treats all with the same gentle care. Sleep is the great equalizer, the one experience that remains fully democratic in an unequal world. Sometimes, if a mortal is experiencing particular difficulty falling asleep, troubled by worries or physical pain, Hypnos will personally attend to them. He will sit beside them, his presence a calming influence, and speak in a voice so soft it is barely audible, speaking not words but feelings directly into the restless mind. Let go. Release your grip. Trust. Fall. I will catch you. You are safe. Rest now. Rest. And under his influence, even the most anxious mind quiets. Even the most active thoughts slow and stop. Even the most tense body relaxes. Because Hypnos is not just the god of sleep, he is sleep itself, and in his presence, resisting sleep becomes impossible. Not because he forces it, but because he makes it so appealing. So obviously the right choice, so clearly what the body and mind need, that surrender becomes natural, inevitable. Welcome. The Greeks built few temples to Hypnos, and this makes sense. We worship him every night by accepting his gift, by lying down and closing our eyes and letting him take us into his realm. Our beds are his altars, our pillows his offerings, our surrender to sleep his most constant prayer. We don't need statues or rituals when we practice his religion every single night of our lives. As you lie in your bed now, imagine Hypnos standing nearby, his dark wings softly folded, his poppy branch in hand, his face peaceful and kind. Imagine him waving that branch over you gently, and with each wave, feeling yourself sinking deeper, letting go more completely, trusting more fully. He is here for you, has always been here for you, has attended every sleep you've ever slept, and will attend every sleep you ever will. You are safe in his care. You are welcome in his cave. Let yourself go now. Let sleep take you. Hypnos waits with infinite patience, ready to grant you his gift the moment you stop resisting and simply allow. Section 11. The music of Apollo, harmony and healing. As we approach the end of our journey through Greek mythology's most peaceful tales, we turn to Apollo, god of music, healing, poetry, and the sun. Though Apollo is known for many things, his archery, his prophecies, his sometimes terrible vengeance, tonight we focus on his gentler aspects, his music that could heal wounds and ease troubled minds. His role as bringer of light and harmony. Apollo's most precious possession was his lyre, a stringed instrument more beautiful than any mortal craftsman could create. The lyre was originally invented by Hermes, Apollo's younger half-brother, who crafted it from a tortoise shell, strings of sheep gut, and arms of antelope horn. Hermes gave it to Apollo as recompense for stealing his cattle, and Apollo, upon hearing its sound, fell so in love with the instrument that he forgave the theft immediately and completely. The lyre in Apollo's hands became more than an instrument. It became a channel for divine harmony, a tool for bringing order to chaos, for calming storms, both literal and metaphorical. When Apollo played his music, expressed the fundamental harmony that underlies all existence, the mathematical ratios that govern the movement of planets, the proportions that make a face beautiful, the patterns that make a melody pleasing. His music was not just sound, but truth made audible. There are stories of Apollo using his music to heal. After battles, he would play for the wounded, and those who heard his lyre found their pain diminishing, their injuries healing faster, their spirits lifting despite their circumstances. The music didn't magically close wounds or mend broken bones. Rather, it helped the body do what it naturally wanted to do, removing psychological and spiritual obstacles to healing, allowing the life force to flow more freely. Apollo's music was also used to calm the mad, to ease the troubled minds of those afflicted by what we might now call mental illness. In ancient Greece, madness was often attributed to the gods or to curses, but Apollo's music could bring clarity, could help disorganized thoughts find structure again, could soothe panic and quiet mania. There was something about the ordered, mathematical beauty of his melodies that reminded disturbed minds of what order felt like, gave them a pattern to reorganize themselves around. Every morning, Apollo drove his golden chariot across the sky, bringing the sun and its light to the world. But his journey began earlier, before dawn, when he would sit on the eastern horizon and play his lyre as a kind of overture to the coming day. This is what caused the gentle brightening that precedes sunrise, the gradual shift from night to day that we call dawn. The sky lightens in response to Apollo's music. The stars fade not from light, but from being outshone by harmony itself. Imagine that moment just before sunrise, when the world is still dark, but somehow you can sense that darkness is ending. The black of night has shifted to deep blue, and on the eastern horizon there's a line of lighter blue or pale yellow. Birds begin to wake, starting with just one or two tentative songs, then more joining in, then a full chorus. The air smells fresh and new, washed by night's coolness, ready to be warmed by the coming sun. This is Apollo's time, the transition he oversees, the gradual, gentle movement from rest to wakefulness. But Apollo understood that wakefulness and rest are partners, not opposites. Each needs the other. His music in the morning prepared the world for the day's activity, but his music in the evening prepared it for rest. In the late afternoon and evening, Apollo's lyre would play different melodies, slower, softer, more contemplative. These were the songs that helped the sun set without sadness, that made the transition to night feel natural and welcome rather than like a loss of light. Apollo had a sanctuary at Delphi, built on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where the oracle would give prophecies inspired by the god. But Delphi was also a place of healing, where people would come not just for prophecy, but for restoration of body and spirit. Pilgrims would sleep in the temple, hoping for healing dreams, and Apollo would sometimes visit these dreams, bringing his music with him, playing for the sleeper, and they would wake feeling renewed, often healed of ailments they had carried for years. The process of healing through Apollo's music was gradual and gentle. It was not instantaneous miracle, but rather acceleration of natural processes, support for the body's own wisdom. Those who experienced it said it felt like their body suddenly remembered how to be healthy, as if the illness had been a kind of forgetting and the music a kind of remembering. Apollo also taught music to mortals, passing on his knowledge to select pupils who showed particular aptitude and dedication. These students learned not just how to play instruments, but the philosophy behind music, how certain scales promoted certain moods, how rhythm could affect heartbeat and breathing, how melody could tell stories without words, how harmony reflected cosmic order. One of Apollo's most famous pupils was Orpheus, whose story we've already explored. Apollo taught Orpheus everything he knew about music, and Orpheus became so skilled that he rivaled even his teacher. Though Apollo was never jealous, a true teacher rejoices when the student excels. Apollo gave Orpheus his own lyre, or one very much like it, and blessed him with the ability to charm all living things with his playing. The relationship between Apollo and music was not about showing off or seeking admiration. It was about service, using his gift to bring order, healing, and beauty into the world. Apollo understood that music had power, that it could affect emotions and thoughts, that it could heal or harm depending on how it was used. And he used his power responsibly, always for benefit, never for manipulation or control. In his temple at Delphi, there was a choir that sang hymns to Apollo, their voices trained to perfect harmony. These hymns were not loud or dramatic, but gentle and sustained, creating a constant background of music that infused the entire sanctuary with peace. Pilgrims would arrive, stressed and troubled, burdened by whatever problems had brought them to seek the oracle's guidance. And the constant music would begin working on them immediately, calming their minds, opening their hearts, preparing them to receive whatever wisdom the oracle would provide. Apollo represented the principle that healing comes through harmony, that disease is a kind of discord, and health is a state of internal agreement, all parts of the body and mind working together in synchronized cooperation. His music externalized this harmony, allowed people to hear what health sounded like, and in hearing it, helped their own systems reorganize themselves to match it. There is a story that once Apollo engaged in a musical contest with Pan, the rustic god of shepherds and wild places, who played the pipes. A mountain king judged the contest, and while everyone else agreed that Apollo's lyre produced the more refined, perfect music, this king declared Pan the winner, either out of genuine preference for Pan's earthier sound or perhaps just to be contrary. Apollo, angry at this poor judgment, gave the king donkey's ears as punishment for having such bad taste. The story is usually told to show Apollo's pride, but it also illustrates his commitment to true harmony over mere popularity. Apollo knew that his music was superior not from arrogance, but from understanding the mathematical and cosmic principles that made it objectively more harmonious. He was not being snobbish, but truthful. Some music really is better, more healing, more aligned with universal order, and pretending otherwise is a disservice to truth. But Apollo's confidence never prevented him from appreciating other forms of music. He respected the simple shepherd's songs, the work songs of laborers, the lullabies of mothers. He understood that all music that comes from genuine feeling has value, even if not all music has the same power to heal or to affect the cosmos. There is room in the world for both Apollo's refined lyre and Pan's rustic pipes, for both serve purposes and touch different hearts. As night approaches and Apollo's chariot descends toward the western horizon, his music changes again, becoming a lullaby for the world, a gentle song that thanks the day for being and welcomes the night that comes. He plays until the sun sets completely, until darkness is full, and then he hands over his duties to his sister Artemis, goddess of the moon, who will watch over the night hours while he rests. And yes, even Apollo rests. Even the god of the sun needs sleep, needs to lie down his lyre and close his eyes and let his consciousness disperse for a while. Some say he sleeps in a golden palace in the west. Some say he travels to the land of the Hyperboreans, a mystical northern paradise where it is always day. But wherever he rests, he does so completely, trusting that the world will continue without his constant attention, that the natural order he has established will persist. As you rest now, imagine you can hear Apollo's evening music, that lullaby for the world. Let it be a signal to your own body and mind that the day's work is done, that you have permission to rest, that sleep is not laziness or weakness, but a natural and necessary part of the eternal cycle of activity and rest. Let Apollo's music organize your thoughts, harmonize your emotions, attune your body to the cosmic rhythm of day and night, waking and sleeping, doing and being. Rest now in perfect harmony, in perfect trust, in perfect peace.